Well, folks, we made it. Episode 10. Pretty exciting. We have gone through so much content with these two gentlemen. We have our marketing expert, Ammon Johns here. Ammon, nice to see you. Thank you for staying up late. He's across the pond, so it's late for him. But he has been so patient to show up every week for the last 10 weeks to walk us through our whole series on digital marketing for home inspectors. And then we have Jeff with Inspect.com.
I am here to help out, and Ammon, thanks so much for helping. Sincerely appreciate it.
So yes, he's put out so much. So we're going to put all the links in there because this is the best way to get your business going is watching all of these episodes that we have, because Ammon has dropped a bunch of really good knowledge bombs. So we're going to finish up today with digital advertising. This one I am not familiar with, so I'm going to be taking notes, Ammon.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
it's the last piece in the puzzle for a good reason, and we'll get into that.
Can you talk real quick before we get into that? Because you've been very specific on how you rolled these things out. And I love it because you've put a couple of these pieces in here that people thought should be either first or last. You want to talk about that, and then we'll jump in here? Going to make you fill us in.
Yeah, it's kind of like building a house. You have to start not with building anything, but with digging. You know, you think, hang on, I'm trying to build a house. Why am I digging a great big hole? I don't want a hole, I want a house. Well, first you've got to have those foundations. And to lay good foundations, you dig down first. When you've got the bedrock for those foundations, you've got the foundations, then you start building up. You start with the exterior walls. It's no good worrying what your kitchen's going to look like before you've got the rest of the building structure there. And, there's no point putting on the roof until you've got something to support it. These things have an order. And likewise, when we're building out a digital marketing plan, there's a lot of parts that it makes sense to have first. You know, the very first thing we looked at is knowing who you are, what your message is, what your brand is, because that's your blueprint for everything. What you're trying to build comes from that. Without that, you're just hoping it goes in the right direction, which is no good. We talked about measuring as the second part, because everything we do after that has to be precise. We need to know if it's working or not, and that means we've got to have the measurements in place. Conversions comes third. Now that we can measure, we check the conversions, and everything we build, we make sure it is working as intended. We try and test things first to make sure that conversion rate is as good as possible before we spend time and energy building out all the things to get people there to find out it doesn't work. So you see what I mean? There's always a logical process.
Nothing better than using a building analogy with home inspectors on how to build this.
Even if you don't get analogies, you get it.
This one you do, because you're not going to put the roof on when you haven't even built the foundation, which is what I think a lot of people make a mistake doing, right?
Yeah.
They truly do. All right. So without further ado, we're going to go for the last piece of the puzzle, which is digital advertising. I don't think a lot of people know what to do with that. Let's talk about it. We're going to do an overview. We're going to do types of advertising, when to use digital advertising, and how to use digital advertising. So let's jump in.
I don't think it's a shock to people that digital advertising is out there. Google are very good at letting people know. The minute you've signed up for Google My Business or Google Places or Google Local, they're letting you know that you can buy ads. They're letting you know that they're happy to run them for you. And that's nice. However, it is this last piece of the puzzle. Make sure all of those things we've talked about first are in place. Because if your conversion rate isn't good and you're spending money to send people there, and with half an hour of time, you could double that conversion rate, then at the moment you're wasting half your money.
Oh, that's the thing. You can do all these things, but are you going to do it right? And are you going to waste your money? And are you also going to target the wrong people, which is a time waster as well?
Yeah. And especially when you are paying for the audience you reach. And that's kind of where we're going to kick off with talking about advertising. Let's talk about it by type. And the easiest way is to look at by price and by content. These are the types of advertising, because everyone's got their own version, but let's have a solid types that we can talk about. So let's look at pricing.
Okay.
Have we got the slide for that one?
Oh, there you go. Well, that's the only slide I have.
Okay.
So you're going to be the main guy on this one.
By pricing, we have three different things that we're looking at. We have what's called PPM, which is pay per mil.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
I fibbed. I didn't know my own strength that you're like, I know there's a slide for this. There it is.
Just made it.
I did. I'm like, whoop, I think I spoke too soon. There you go. So yes, here's that are types.
Okay, so PPM is it's by number of impressions, and it's always rounded to the 1,000. It's mil as in the French for 1,000 rather than mil as in short for million. PPM, it's controllable. It's very, very budgetable. I.e., you know what the audience is. You know how many people it's going to reach. You run that, so many people see it. But there's a reason it's the worst, and we'll come back to that in a little bit later. But yeah, that's the one. It's by the number of people seeing it. This is really, really good if you know everything. If you know that this is the perfect audience for you, you have really tweaked it for the specific audience it's being shown to. If you've got all of the skills, then you can make pay per mil work for you, because they're basing pricing on demand from the average person. If you're better than average, you're targeting your message, then you can make this work for you. Otherwise, pay-per-click, PPC, is much more preferable to where you want to be. So pay-per-click, that's the Google AdWords version. This is, they show the ads to everyone they want to, and you only pay when that ad is clicked. It's used in affiliate programs. It's used in all kinds of things. It's solid because you're paying per lead.
Right, and you really do want to know the difference, because that could cost you quite a bit of money, correct?
Exactly. The first one, whether that is seen by people, whether or not they act on it, whether it was only seen, a glimpse of the side of their eye, whether it's in that area of the page where they got banner blindness, the fact it was served means you pay for it. With pay-per-click, you're only paying if they've clicked on it. Now, that doesn't always still mean that they're a customer, because people can click out of interest, people can click to see what it is, but it's much more deliverable. You know that this is a click and it should be landing on your site.
It sounds like the technique is to just work on your PPC first to work at your targeting, also to be least offensive in PPM, and then you can take on all that information you've learned in PPC is use it to be smarter about your PPM program.
Yeah. And there's even little tricks that can be done with pay-per-click. Now, Google will only run ads if they get a certain amount of clicks. If it's not generating money for them, they're not going to show it to people. Because it's just not generating any money. So they do look at the click-through rate to determine how popular an ad is, where it rates, as well as the price. The price times the click-through rate is how Google sorts the order of those ads. Mm-hmm. However, there are times when you can find a particular niche has almost no advertising in it, and that can be made to work for you. Years ago, I worked for a mortgage company, and what we did was we ran ads very specifically on certain postcodes where people were looking for properties to buy. They're not looking for a mortgage, they haven't even found a house yet, but we targeted those searches so that our brand was showing up even at that stage. Now, we had to actually pay a few people to click those for us. We had to then pay for the clicks, but we did it just to keep the ads visible so that Google wouldn't stop the campaign as ineffective. We weren't competing with any other mortgage companies, so the prices were very, very cheap. Nobody had thought to target this. And it did very, very well for us. By the time they had found a property, they felt like they'd been seeing our ad everywhere.
Kind of like how I keep seeing Jeff's ad everywhere. We've joked about that. I just be scrolling. I see Jeff's face just pop in there, and I'm like, there he is again. Jeff,
Hi.
just follow me, guys. This is why we brought Ammon on, because this is deep dive, really good stuff that a lot of people are just not aware of. I think it's out there, but Ammon, that kind of format that you've got going on for that, even describing that of how you approach that is I think what people aren't aware of too. And what about fixed rate? That's
this tends to be private arrangements. Sometimes you've got a particular newsletter, publication, or group who will advertise you in whatever way at a fixed fee. They'll just say, right, give us X amount for doing it. And those are great because you always know what the audience is, you always know what the circumstances are, and it's usually a very good rate for you. This could be having your card up in a place that specializes in house cleaning. They'll have a little poster up in their front of shop. Anything where you can get exposure to people who may also need building inspections done. That could be a fixed rate deal.
Gotcha. And again, I'm sure you've probably heard of some circumstances where people have just, like, it's been disastrous when it's not been approached properly, right?
Yeah. Anything except pay-per-click, you're not guaranteed results. And even with pay-per-click, you're only guaranteed they're going to click, not that they're going to buy. So,
and that's where you build your house better, because you need to have that something that they actually want to click on, which is why we are using this as the last one. Jeff, how about you? What's been your experience? I know you definitely experiment with a lot of this.
I was pleased when I was talking to Ammon. I did work on my targeted ads first. I worked on trying to figure out exactly who my audience was. And how I would engage best with them, and then focused all of my advertising towards that. And then I worked on conversions. This fly's killing me.
I know. I was like, he is digging what you're saying.
He's on point. I then took that data back and I used it to immediately improve my conversions. I figured out what I was doing right and wrong, and was able to kind of increase my click through, and that gave me like better working capital as it let my budget go further. And I continued in PPC and then lightly played around with the price per million, just the impressions, because I didn't want to make impressions and not have a handle on who I was making impressions with or what I was presenting to them. Is kind of like, as Amma says, you don't want to offend them. Is basically with price per million, or PPM is you're offending people. It's as if you're presenting to them and they don't want to see it. So you try to be very judicious in using that. So I'm fortunate to say I've had like good, smart people helping me out in building a website, and then going to PPC and doing conversions. And I think the message for me is just like be smart and talk to people that know what they're doing. That's what I learned.
One of the counterintuitive things for people who are new to marketing is the idea, oh, well, I want as many people to see it as possible. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
You really do not want to tick off as many people as possible. Let's face it, most of us, when we see an ad a lot, we hate it. And, we all remember those terrible TV ads, terrible radio ads, terrible print ads, which we just saw everywhere, and we're just, oh, for God's sake, give it a rest. We do not want to be that. The idea in all advertising is to be able to convert as high as possible by showing it to as few as necessary.
Right. Enchantment, exclusivity. Here in the States, obviously, we're going through that right now with the election. So even local elections, I'm getting texts all the time. I'm seeing so much, just personally that's being targeted to my phone. And then, I think the other thing too, you guys, is that right now you can skip through a lot of ads just depending on if you've recorded it. So we're sensitive to it even more so now of if it's an onslaught of information that's not geared towards us.
Yeah, one of the biggest drivers of the sales of TiVo was the ability to skip those ads.
Yeah.
Because we all love them.
Now we're really, really spoiled for sure. So, all right. So now we're going to go to types of advertising by content.
Yeah.
So we have ad block, inline, and we got the whole thing. Jump in.
Just before we jump, I will say use pay-per-click to learn your conversion rates before doing PPM, because that will help you have the knowledge. But even then, when you first start doing PPM, understand that you need to have disposable budget. What if you've got it wrong? This budget could be wasted. So don't have too much. Just test campaigns. Put a toe in the water. Don't go diving in before checking A, the depth, and B, the temperature. Be careful when you're spending.
So smart, because you really could get burned. So yeah, it needs to.
And also,
go ahead,
that
Jeff.
certain platforms will be more prone to, or be more inclined towards serving that particular model. Like, so for example, is if you're on Google Ads, you can count on a PPC type model, but if you go to a Facebook, you might be talking more PPM, and so you got to be aware of if you don't want to be doing a lot of PPM because you're early. Is make sure you're careful which platforms you're playing on.
Yeah.
This is when I enjoy not being the smartest one in the room. These guys know what's what. And especially when it comes to this, again, because you really could get yourself in a pickle and, again, alienate folks and be flat broke without anything to show for it.
Yeah, exactly. Both.
Okay, so types of ad by content. This is useful to know as well, because different content types are good for different kinds of messages, different ways of reaching people. So ad blocks. This is kind of like Google, where it's got sponsored links at the top, or on any website where, it's got a visible part that you can see is marked as advertising. There is a block for ads on that page, and it's clear that that's the ad. It gets seen, but it's also not going to confuse anybody that this is anything other than an advertisement. Then we've got the inline or endorsement. And the reason I've got both of these is we're not only talking about print and digital print here. Inline is kind of where it is in the middle of something. It flows. It may be a paid placement in the middle of, a story that relates, or it could be that, they've endorsed this product or service as the one they've used while going through this article. Obviously, in video content, the endorsements come in. We've all seen those adverts where, somebody's halfway through the video and this week we're sponsored by Skillshare, and, they talk about how these courses are great. Those are in line. You can't miss them. It's an endorsement, but they're making clear it's an advertisement as well. Then we've got interstitial. Now, these are the ones you see a lot more rarely in print, but this is when you click a link to go to an article and you're shown an ad before you get there, and it says you'll be forwarded in a moment. That's an interstitial. And these are much more like the TV style of ads, where before we get that program, we've got an ad break that we can't miss. And Google do this, of course, as well. Where on YouTube, you go to start a video and it shows you the ad first. And you can't skip until you've watched a few seconds of it. Those are interstitials. They're obnoxious, but they're the most visible.
You're trying to get around it too. Have you ever seen that when you're seeing the ad and you can't really get around it? You have to just wait that time. It's so interesting how much lack of patience we have for that first 10 seconds before we can skip through it, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of ad blockers that remove those ads for you. Mm-hmm. However, do bear in mind that if you like YouTubers and you support their channels and you have those ad blockers, you are stopping them getting ad impressions and stopping them, making as much money.
That is a great point, by the way, because they are there for a reason, and that's why we're having this conversation too of how to get in front of people.
Yeah. Final one we'll talk about is sponsored content, and this is often where you pay for the whole piece of content itself. This can be kind of like guest posting on the internet. It can be featured articles in print as well. Old digital print, you could pay to have a story investigated and run. You could pay to have a full page ad, which you'd written as a piece of content. So it was an article rather than just a glossy picture. So sponsored content is a very, very powerful way of doing the infomercial.
Any tips on how to choose between these, or what do you think works best?
It's all going to depend on
$10,000 question.
Yeah, it's going to depend on what your message is, who you're trying to reach, where you're trying to reach them. The reason we mention all this is, to spark those ideas. If you've got somebody you want to reach and you've got a message and you know how long that message is or how it's got to be presented, that will help you determine which of these you would need to use. Sponsored content, if you've got a complex message, you're going to need time to get that across. Sponsored content is where you've got as much time and space as you pay for.
Gotcha.
Interstitials are the most objected to by people because they can't avoid them. So make them short, punchy, and most of all, forgivable. Go for the humor, go for the something that they can't get too annoyed with you about.
Yeah. That is a great tip. It is true. It's more like, oh, okay, that was cute. If I had to watch something, that was heartwarming or funny or anything like that.
I had to watch it.
There was an ad a few years ago, doggy dentures. It was a fake ad for dog chews that cleaned their teeth, but it started off with an ad for doggy dentures. And every time those dogs with the false teeth grinned at me from the screen, I started laughing. Every time, didn't matter how often I saw that ad couldn't be overdone for me.
Don't even have a dog.
I don't have a dog, right?
I know which one you're talking about too. That's what's funny. I can just totally see it because it's the big teeth, and so look how effective that is. It's
every time was the one that just sent me. Yeah.
It's the old version of jingles, you guys. Remember, jingles are just a thing of the past, but they really do. Yeah. They really do stick in your head. There's still a few that you see on TV, but I'm with you on that one too. That's quality right there. All right, and so when to use digital advertising? Another big question: the budget priority.
Exactly. This is what determines it all. Now, Jeff, you've got something on this, haven't you?
Well, I actually had a couple of things, but
does he have the doggy dentures? Is that what's going to happen here?
No, is that I thought that okay, I have limited budget. I'm going to go ahead. I have $250 a month. I'm going to put it all into PPC. I'm going to put it into Google Ads. I'm going to try to just tickle 2 or 3 inspections a month out of it. Maybe make 250 and make like 1,000 and try to kind of slowly grow it. And it was good and effective. So I'm going I had my start. My start was to do PPC, and I got corrected because it's I had a website to land on, and absent that website, I had nothing of substance and value to really land upon. So it really begins with having content that you can land on and completely refer back to, and Google can refer back to. So when to advertise is when you have a budget. When you have a budget, and get your priorities done first. I think that's what I need to let people know.
The budget priority is always about what's the smartest use for any money that you have. And remember some of the things we've talked about. If you do not have your brand sorted out, then instead of putting that $250 on an ad that is hit or miss, throwing spaghetti at the wall at best, spend that on, a night off work to sit and really think about that. Spend it on a weekend away. It's more sensible to get your head straight for that. If you haven't got your analytics in place, before you buy ads, pay for somebody to set up those analytics. If you're not great at this, get somebody who is, get a professional who specializes in this to set it up for you, set up a dashboard for you that you can look at and really understand at any time. And all of the steps we've talked about, if there are any of those unaddressed that you aren't absolutely missing, if you're missing social media because by choice that's just not where you're good, that's fine. But all of the rest, check you've done those first. If you haven't, don't be putting this budget into ads that are hit and miss. Buy once, gone. Look at those other things that last, that are the foundations that are still going to be there month after month after month after month. Spend your money right. And content comes up there as well.
Absolutely. And in doing that what you're going to do is you're going to learn that through PPC, certain content actually just resonates well, that it really delivers and it converts well. And then what you can do is now you can take that and you can double down and amplify that with PPM. And you take your winners, and you can take your winners and amplify them in PPM. Now you already know it's smart, you know it's good, you know it's converting, and then you might as well resonate that.
Yeah.
You are so adept at that too, by the way, Jeff. I know you've
I learned it from that
dabbled
guy.
in it and learned the hard way and the fast way and the good way and all different types of things. But Ammon, I really appreciate that advice too, because what you're saying as well is, and you're not going to hear this from a lot of marketing people. They just throw money at it. But you're saying, like, take your time, follow those steps, take the time to figure out your brand. Spend that on a night to just go chill out, but take that time to figure out exactly what it is that you're about, and then direct the money at it.
Exactly that. Once you've got the measurement in place, once you've been building your content and you know what content is working, that's when you can do a very limited campaign to amplify the reach of that content.
Yeah.
Promote it on Facebook, promote it on Twitter, so it's seen by more people, so more people get to that quality content. And you know it's quality because people have already been reacting to it before you spent the money on it. And amplifying the content is usually a lot cheaper and a lot less resistance than a straight up ad, buy my product.
But that's because you have your head straight and you have your business set, you know what your goals are, and you have metrics that you're seriously looking at to see, and you can determine if you're converting or not. So is take that weekend off. Go spend $250 and have a nice vacation at the beach and just think about it and think about what you want to do, and that's really money well spent, and it's a good time too.
Yeah. And the target audience thing, again, to move away from the buy my product, which is so 1950s in a way, the Mad Men type of thing of just shoving it in people's faces, but saying that to the right folks. So how about the how?
Yeah. So the two things that really separate digital advertising is that we have a lot more granular control over who's seeing it, how, where. The ability to target demographically rather than everyone who reads a publication. In the days of print, everyone who read that paper was going to see your ad, which sounds great, but it isn't. When you're talking Facebook, you can, rather than just show everybody on Facebook, you can do that. They'll take your money very happily for doing that. It's going to cost you a fortune. But you can target really specifically and say only people with an interest in this who are members of this group and have my pixel are going to see this ad. And you can really, really be super precise so that everyone is a really targeted lead. And you're automating that early lead warm-up process rather than throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing how much sticks.
Can I stop you for a second and ask you what Pixel is for those who don't know what that means?
Pixel is Facebook's own analytics offering. It's kind of like Google Analytics, but it's tied to Facebook. And literally you put this little bit of code into your HTML, into your pages, and it lets you track all kinds of stats on that page. But more importantly, Facebook knows when people have picked up that pixel on that page, what it relates to, and you can then show retargeted ads. You know how Jeff's face keeps showing up for you again and again? Pixel lets you do that across Facebook.
Guilty.
So that, if somebody has watched one of your broadcasts, one of your posts, one of your specific things, they're more likely to see all of the others, and you can specifically pay just to show those people.
So it sounds creepy, but it's pretty dang cool, folks. So don't get freaked out. Just learn the system or find someone to pay somebody to learn the system or to run that system for you.
It's more someone's coming to your home inspection website, and so they've expressed an interest in home inspections, and you particularly, they picked to come there, and your thought is that they might need you, but maybe later. So I want to go ahead on occasion and remind them that I'm here, remind them that I'm a professional, and let them know that when they need me, if I could be of service, that I'm honored to serve them. So otherwise, if you're a home buyer in a year and a half between impression matters, is you might have lost that potential client.
It's always the degree that determines it.
Yeah.
The thing itself isn't creepy. Look, if you were at a meeting at the town hall to discuss some project that's being done, and that meant there were all the campaigners pro and against there, and you looked around, you might recognize some of those people. You might recognize them on the street and be able to go up to them again later on and say, oh, I saw you at the town meeting. Okay. And Pixel and things like that are allowing you to do that automatically in the way you could in real life. The difference is, just like in real life, the fact that you saw them at that town hall doesn't mean you should sit outside their house every night in a car.
Now that's creepy.
Exactly. Just because you can do it in real life doesn't mean you should. And just because you can do things online doesn't mean you should. Be thoughtful, be considerate.
That's such great advice.
It is great advice too, and it's really kind of also it emphasizes why you really know what you're doing with PPC, because if the only people that come to your website are the people that really need you, then you know they need you. And if you continue to educate them lightly, then you're adding value. Is you're actually being productive and giving them information that they're basically signaling to you a year and a half in advance they're going to need you. And a lot of people do that. They look for a home inspector a year before they're ready to buy. They just do that. I know that for a fact. So is people are calling me and talking about a house they're going to be buying next year sometimes. You're trying to stay in contact with those people.
Now, I know that you work with a guy who's very good in digital advertising, really, really good. But one thing I do warn people about with retargeting is the fails. And there is a really obvious fail that happens quite a lot. Amazon are terrible at this. You know, you look at a product and then for the next 3 months, they send you, oh, were you still interested in this product? No, I was looking that day. I looked at 4 websites. I bought one of them. And for 3 months since then, you've been sending me things of the thing I bought already. Be careful. Sometimes some purchases are a thing that are made almost certainly instantly. And you need to not retarget those people because they've already bought the damn thing.
No means no, folks. Or just, if I haven't gotten back to you, please stop sending it.
Your site isn't the only site. Just because they came on your site and were interested in the thing and didn't buy it, doesn't mean they didn't buy it on any of the 6, 7 other tabs they had open at the same time. They shopped around, you may have lost. By all means, retarget once. Send them, a link to it at a special offer if necessary.
Right.
If that doesn't get clicked, delete them from your database.
That's really smart, because that's that's being thoughtful, that you keep saying, which I absolutely love, and then also smart, because you're right. That's something that will get on your nerves. Now, I have been enchanted by people who then send me something later on. I go, okay, that I will consider. But again, if that's not clicked on when you've been offering something as well, then that's not gonna. You don't want to alienate folks with that, right?
That's money wasted too.
It is money wasted.
Maybe you could go take that money and you could do a light advertising in, like I mentioned to me, is in a trade journal that's geared towards people that do flipping and remodeling. And now these people are looking and they're seeing you as a home inspector, someone that's able to help them before they've even bought the house they're going to flip. And next thing you know, they're lining you up for, in the future when they buy a house that they're going to flip, as you're the inspector. So be smart about where you put your money instead is just definitely don't waste your money. And
I think one of the things home inspectors often miss is the correlation to other things people. Google are really good at this. Their search results correlate so much stuff. But how many of you think painter and decorators are often called in for houses that have been fixed up and are about to be sold, or generally are about to be sold? Are you in with the local paint and decorating companies? Because if you're not, that's an obvious trick you're missing.
That is really good advice too, the collaborative type of thing as well. And real quick, I just want to go back to Jeff, what you were saying too. If you are watching this and you are an inspector, what you were saying, Jeff, about how people are going to be looking, later on down the road, you definitely want to consider being listed in Inspect.com. I just got to throw this in here because that is a place for you to be listed at this point for free right now. A very valuable listing, so that if it is somebody who's looking a year in advance for something of thinking of moving to another part of the country, you're going to be found easily in there. And that is my plug for Inspect.com, because that's where I'm listed. That's where you're listed, right, Jeff?
I'm glad to offer that. And just if you think about it, it's just even if you don't have a very limited budget, you just need a place to just be found. So get your LinkedIn profile, get set up, or get a free, we'll do it right now, free Inspect.com listing. And it's just like a little mini website for your business. Make it look really good. We'll fluff it up for you, no charge. And then you can kind of point towards that if you want to. And it has, if you eventually get a website or it has your phone number on it, people can find you. Just be found.
That's what I did for TMC services. I'm too busy out there doing inspections. I don't need this big fancy website per se. It's my curriculum vitae of the projects I've worked on for the last 20 years, a way to find me, some fancy pictures of me on a job site and all the cool buildings I've been in. And that's it. Boom. So that was really helpful for me as well.
Well, I have the analytics, and your page, your listing does just find me. It gets plenty of people coming through and looking and connecting through.
It looks fancy enough to get me hired, but then I don't have to maintain it. And go back to, I can't remember which episode it is, but we did talk about website design, and Ammon really did some great information on that as well, because some people do just have these super unwieldy, heavy websites with all this junk on it and a shopping cart. What are you buying? You just hire me as an inspector. So
yeah. And
awesome.
Honestly, if you're starting out, you don't even necessarily need a website unless you've got something that cannot be written into a LinkedIn profile, that cannot be written into an Inspect.com profile. If those have all of the contact information and everything you need to sell your service, use those. Save yourself a fortune.
Mm-hmm. I think that in the last 10 years especially, it's gotten so complicated, and you get decision fatigue of trying to figure out what to put on there. But honestly, and that goes back to spending that time figuring out your brand, going back to what's really important, who you want to actually work with, what your mission is, what you offer, where you offer it, and kind of go from there.
Yeah. The only reason that you really need a website rather than relying on profiles elsewhere is so that you've got something you own and you can build the brand equity to your property rather than you're listing on someone else's site, where if you have a falling out with that company and you pull that,
and it happens,
that URL is gone. All of that effort you spent building up that brand is gone.
Right. So important. And then, of course, you would want to have a website if you are writing blogs, which, Jeff, you do such a great job. And we talk about some of the blogs that come out. And depending on hurricane season, different times of year, you get some clicks on that.
Yeah, you should consider your market. So if you're a large market like me, I can just push out PPC because I'm like talking to 5 million people. But if you live in a small town, you need to be more engaging with your client base. You need to secure more of those people. So maybe you do use blogs and you're much more conversational and personal, and you really talk local, and you're like the local newspaper almost, as you really have a grasp on the local market. Yeah, it's just be a part of the market, be part of your community, serve them.
Absolutely. So are we good on this, gentlemen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the main thing is that the one advantage of paid advertising over anything else is the ability to turn it off. Mm-hmm. You can stop that the minute that you need to. This was really important when I was working with realtors. If you're listing a property and that property sells and you carry on advertising it and people want to see that property, I'm sorry, it sounds fake, doesn't it? We all think, companies do that. They advertise something great that they don't have so that they can then show you something else. Yeah, that car on the car lot that isn't there, and that house that isn't in that actual real. Yeah, we are critical of that, and other people are critical of that. So be careful. If you've got a thing that needs to stop being listed, advertising lets you do that straight away. They will not show that ad if they're not getting paid for it. Google might still show old results until it realizes that it's gone. But yeah.
People are very wary and weary of that.
And the smart thing is, think laterally. The more you can put in, the more you can really be super smart about where, how, and who you are targeting, the more value you will get out of your ads. And like I said, think of the other things that people are looking for as signs that they're going to be looking for you before they start to, so that you're able to prime them, give them a little bit of brand exposure even before they've started looking for an inspector. And that is people that do industrial cleaning, if you're doing industrial business inspections, people that do painting and decorating, people that build houses, the constructors. They're going to list those, or somebody's going to list those. They're going to want them inspected, or buyers are going to want them inspected. Either way, there is an opportunity there to be targeting search phrases related to that road or anything like that.
And gentlemen, that concludes this amazing series. I love that we kind of touched on a few of the things that we've covered in the past 10 episodes. And I'm going to put this up real quick once again. So this has been presented by Inspect.com. If you are a home inspector and you want to get listed, just reach out to us on Inspect.com. Now, we don't take everybody, just everybody, do we, Jeff?
No, please be focused on serving your market and make sure that if you're in a licensed state, you have licensing credentials and, be experienced and be qualified and be concerned about serving your clients sincerely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Ammon, where can we find you now after all this and all this great information you've been offering us?
Oh, I'm kind of omnipresent. Just put my name into a search engine and you'll find me.
Just say Ammon and he gets summoned. That's
not
Google.
3 times in a mirror.
Exactly. That's Google for you, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Well, this concludes it. You're going to be able to see all of the episodes. We're going to have that listed below. And if you're going to be watching this on YouTube, we'll have that as well. So that's it, folks. Thank you so much. Good to see everybody. Take care.